Welcome back to the channel. USA Coins 69, Piece of American History, the 1978 1-cent Lincoln penny with its mint mark. At first glance, it's just a copper coin that's been in countless hands over the decades, but in certain rare cases, this little penny has a secret that could turn it into a life-changing discovery. By the time we reach the end of this story, you might find yourself digging through your coin jar with a whole new sense of excitement. Let's set the stage. The year was 1978, a time when disco was still booming, the US was pushing forward with technological advances, and the economy was shifting in new directions. In the middle of all this, the US Mint quietly struck millions of pennies, each bearing the iconic image of Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln cent had been in circulation since 1909, replacing the Indian head penny, and by 1978 it was one of the most familiar coins in America. Yet as ordinary as it seemed, not all pennies from this year were created equal. On the obverse side, you'll see the dignified profile of Abraham Lincoln facing right, the word "Liberty" to his left, and the motto, "In God We Trust," arched above. Below, the year 1978 is stamped clearly, and right beside it lies the all-important mint mark, a tiny letter that tells you where the coin was struck. A D means Denver, an S stands for San Francisco, and no mint mark means it was minted in Philadelphia. That little letter is more than a location, it's a clue, a breadcrumb for collectors hunting down the rarest variations. Flip the penny over and you're greeted with the detailed image of the Lincoln Memorial. Every column, every shadow in its architecture, was carefully engraved to represent one of the most important monuments in the United States. And if you look closely, really closely, you can even spot a tiny outline of the statue of Lincoln sitting inside, a small but beautiful detail that often goes unnoticed. The reverse also proudly displays United States of America and E pluribus unum, along with the denomination, 1 cent. Now, here's where the magic comes in. The vast majority of 1978 pennies are worth just their face value, but there's a rare combination of factors that can send the value skyrocketing. Condition is the first key. Most pennies from this year have been heavily circulated, meaning they're scratched, worn, and discolored. But a few have survived the decades in flawless, uncirculated condition, their copper surfaces gleaming as if they were struck yesterday. Collectors value these high-grade examples tremendously, and professional grading can make all the difference. A coin graded MS66 or higher enters an elite category, but that's just the start. The second factor is the mint mark. Certain mint locations produced fewer coins, making them rarer. And finally, there's the wild card, minting errors. A 1978 penny with an off-center strike, doubling in the lettering or date, or even struck on the wrong metal planchet is incredibly rare. These errors were never meant to leave the mint, and their scarcity makes them highly sought after by serious collectors. Imagine finding one of these hidden treasures. Maybe it's in a jar of loose change passed down from a relative. Maybe it's tucked away in an old wallet or forgotten box in the attic. You hold it up to the light, see its sharp details, perfect luster, and unusual features, and suddenly you realize you're holding something special, something most people will never even see in their lifetime. That's the thrill of coin collecting, the hunt, the history, and the chance to uncover a gem hiding in plain sight. And now, the moment you've been waiting for. If you have a 1978 1-cent Lincoln penny with the right mint mark, in pristine uncirculated condition, and possibly with a rare minting error, it could be worth an astounding $67,000. Today, we're diving deep into the fascinating world of United States coinage to explore one small but incredibly important piece of American history, the 1971 Lincoln 1-cent penny with mint mark. At first glance, it might look like just another ordinary penny, the kind you'd find jingling in your pocket or hiding between couch cushions. But appearances can be deceiving, and in the world of numismatics, even the smallest coin can carry a story of craftsmanship, history, and surprising value. So get ready, because we're about to uncover everything you need to know about this iconic coin, and by the end, you might just be rushing to check your change. The Lincoln penny has been part of American life for well over a century, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure, breaking away from the tradition of Lady Liberty designs. Over the decades, the penny has gone through several changes, but in 1971, the design still carried Victor David Brenner's famous portrait of Lincoln on the obverse. That year's pennies were struck in large numbers, but certain mint marks and conditions make some of them far rarer than you might think. The obverse, or front, of the 1971 penny showcases Lincoln's dignified profile, his face etched with the determination and wisdom he is remembered for. Above his head, the phrase, "In God We Trust," stretches across the top, with the word "Liberty" placed to the left and the date 1971 just to the right, often accompanied by a mint mark. That tiny mint mark, whether it's AD for Denver, S for San Francisco, or no mark for Philadelphia, can be a big clue to the coin's rarity. On the reverse, you'll see the classic Lincoln memorial design created by Frank Gasparo, complete with its stately columns and tiny image of Lincoln seated within, visible if you look closely with a magnifying glass. The words, "United States of America," and "1 cent" frame this design, with "De Pluribus Unum" just above the memorial. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. In 1971, pennies were still made mostly from a bronze alloy of copper, tin, and zinc. But over the years, environmental conditions, circulation wear, and production variations have made it tricky to find well-preserved examples, especially those with sharp details and a lustrous, original mint finish. Coins struck at the San Francisco Mint in proof condition are beautiful in their own right, but certain business strike coins with exceptionally high grades can command serious attention from collectors. Why is this particular year so special? Well, the 1971 pennies are famous for having some fascinating varieties and errors. These include double dies, where the lettering or parts of Lincoln's image appear slightly doubled because of a misalignment in the minting process. These errors might sound minor, but collectors adore them because each one is a unique, unrepeatable piece of history. The sharper and more dramatic the doubling, the more a collector is willing to pay. Some pennies from 1971 also have striking differences in luster or planchet quality, and a small handful were preserved so perfectly that they've survived the decades without a scratch. Condition is everything in the coin world. A heavily circulated penny from 1971 is usually worth just its face value, maybe a bit more if it's an interesting variety. But if you find one in uncirculated, mint state condition, especially with a rare error or a particularly strong strike, its value can rise dramatically. Collectors pay a premium for coins that still shine as they did the day they left the mint, with every detail crisp and the surfaces free from spots, stains, or scratches. Some of these rare finds have surfaced in private collections, auctions, and coin shows, leaving seasoned numismatists stunned at the final hammer price. That's why people all over the country still search through rolls of pennies, flea market finds, and old coin jars, hoping to stumble upon one of these elusive treasures. Every so often, one lucky person will discover that the humble penny in their pocket is far more valuable than they could have imagined. And now, the part you've been waiting for, the value. Today, we're going to talk about a coin that many of us have probably seen, handled, and maybe even tossed into a change jar without giving it a second thought: the United States 1-cent Lincoln penny from 1982 with mint mark. This small copper-colored coin might seem ordinary, but certain versions of it have become some of the most talked about treasures in the coin collecting world. What makes the 1982 penny so special is that it's not just a single type of coin, but a year full of changes, surprises, and rare varieties that have captured the attention of collectors everywhere. To understand why the 1982 penny is so unique, we have to take a quick look at what was happening in the U.S. Mint during that time. For decades, pennies had been made primarily of a bronze alloy, 95% copper with the remaining 5% made up of tin and zinc. But in 1982, rising copper prices meant that the metal in each penny was worth more than its face value. The mint needed a solution, and that's when they made one of the biggest changes in penny history. Partway through the year, they switched from bronze to a cheaper composition, zinc with a thin copper plating. This change didn't just affect the value of the coin's metal, it also led to multiple varieties being minted that year, each with its own distinct characteristics. If you take a close look at the obverse of a 1982 penny, you'll see the familiar profile of President Abraham Lincoln, his face filled with the quiet dignity and strength that made him one of America's greatest leaders. Above his head is the phrase, "In God We Trust," to his left the word liberty, and to the right, the year 1982 along with a small mint mark, either a D for Denver or no mint mark for Philadelphia. On the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial in all its stately glory, with the words, United States of America, along the top, 1 cent, along the bottom, and E pluribus unum, just above the memorial. The real magic of the 1982 penny lies in the details that separate one variety from another. There were large date and small date designs produced that year, and both the bronze and zinc compositions exist in each date style. This means there are multiple combinations: large date copper, large date zinc, small date copper, and small date zinc, for both the Denver and Philadelphia mints. On top of that, some rare transitional errors occurred when leftover bronze planchets were accidentally used after the switch to zinc, creating extremely rare coins that collectors are eager to find. Collectors love the 1982 penny because it's like a puzzle waiting to be solved. To the casual observer, they all look the same, but once you know what to look for, the weight differences between copper and zinc coins, the subtle changes in the date size, and the feel of the coin in your hand, you begin to see why this year is so fascinating. Bronze pennies from 1982 weigh about 3.11 grams, while the zinc ones weigh closer to 2.5 grams. That difference in weight is one of the key ways to identify the more valuable versions. Condition is also critically important. Most pennies from 1982 have been circulating for decades, picking up scratches, nicks, and tarnish along the way. But the most valuable examples are those that have been preserved in mint state condition, with sharp details, bright luster, and no signs of wear. When one of these rare varieties appears in pristine condition, collectors are willing to pay astonishing amounts to add it to their collection. Stories of people finding rare 1982 pennies in pocket change or inherited coin jars keep hope alive for treasure hunters everywhere. Imagine the excitement of realizing that the penny you've been holding is not only a piece of history but also a rare variety worth far more than 1 cent. That thrill is what drives so many people to keep searching through their change. Today, we're going to shine a spotlight on a small but historically rich treasure, the United States 1-cent Lincoln penny from 1973 with mint mark. At first glance, it's just another penny, something we pass along without thinking twice when making everyday purchases. But the truth is, certain examples of this coin are far from ordinary, and the right one could turn out to be worth an incredible amount of money. So, get ready as we dig deep into its history, design, varieties, and the reasons why collectors around the world are still hunting for this gem. The Lincoln penny has been a fixture of American currency since 1909, when it was first introduced to commemorate the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, it was revolutionary at the time, marking the first occasion a U.S. coin featured a real historical figure. Over the decades, subtle changes were made to the design, but by 1973, the penny still proudly bore Lincoln's portrait on the obverse. This year's minting also came during a time of change and uncertainty in the U.S., with the economy facing challenges and the mint working tirelessly to produce coins that would stand the test of time. The obverse of the 1973 penny features Lincoln's right-facing profile, full of the quiet strength and wisdom that define his legacy. Above his head arcs the national motto, "In God We Trust," a reminder of the ideals that the nation holds dear. To his left sits the word liberty, and to the right is the date 1973, which may be accompanied by a mint mark, a small but significant letter indicating where the coin was made. A D marks the Denver Mint, an S stands for the San Francisco Mint, and no mint mark means it came from Philadelphia. Each mint location can carry its own level of desirability depending on mintage numbers, survival rates, and collector interest. On the reverse side, designed by Frank Gasparo, we see the iconic Lincoln Memorial, standing tall and proud in Washington, D.C. This isn't just a symbol of architecture, it's a nod to the enduring influence of Lincoln himself. Look closely, and you can even see a tiny representation of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a small detail that reflects the craftsmanship and attention to detail in U.S. coinage. Around the design are the inscriptions, United States of America, E pluribus unum, and 1 cent, a reminder that even the smallest denomination carries with it the identity and values of the nation. What makes the 1973 penny stand out to collectors isn't just its beauty, but the combination of rarity, condition, and sometimes, unique errors that make certain pieces truly special. While millions were minted, the majority were heavily circulated, meaning they picked up scratches, nicks, and wear from decades of use. Finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is no small feat, and that's where the value begins to climb. Collectors are especially excited by coins that show exceptional sharpness in their strike, brilliant original luster, and no signs of handling. Some coins from this year also exhibit interesting minting anomalies, such as double dies, where parts of the design appear slightly duplicated, or off-center strikes that result in an unusual and eye-catching look. These error coins are especially desirable because no two are exactly alike, making them one-of-a-kind pieces of history. For serious collectors, the allure of the 1973 penny lies not only in its potential rarity but also in the satisfaction of owning a coin that has survived for over half a century in near-perfect condition. Imagine the journey of such a coin, carefully stored away in a collection or forgotten in a roll of coins, only to be rediscovered decades later in the same flawless state as when it left the mint. While most 1973 pennies you find in circulation today will only be worth a cent or slightly more, the rarest examples, especially those with mint marks, high grades, and possibly striking errors, can fetch incredible sums at auctions and among private collectors. Stories abound of people discovering rare pennies in old jars, estate sales, or inherited collections, only to find out they're holding a tiny but valuable piece of American history. Today we're going to focus on a coin that most people have handled countless times without ever realizing it could be hiding an incredible secret: the United States 1-cent Lincoln penny from 1979 with mint mark. It's a coin you might spot in your change, sitting at the bottom of a coin jar, or tucked away in an old drawer, but certain examples from this year have shocked collectors with their rarity and value. So get comfortable, because we're going to explore its history, design, special varieties, and why you should be paying close attention to every 1979 penny that crosses your path. The Lincoln penny is one of America's most iconic coins, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. Designed by Victor David Brenner, it was a groundbreaking change in U.S. coinage, as it became the first circulating coin to feature a real historical figure instead of the traditional Liberty image. Over the decades, the penny's design has become a familiar sight in pockets, purses, and cash registers, and by 1979, it still carried that same classic look that had been a part of American life for 70 years. On the obverse side of the 1979 penny, you'll see Lincoln's familiar right-facing profile, his expression calm yet full of determination, a tribute to his enduring leadership and legacy. Above his head arches the national motto, "In God We Trust," while the word "Liberty" rests to the left, symbolizing the ideals on which the country was founded. To the right of Lincoln's portrait, you'll see the date 1979 along with a mint mark that reveals where the coin was struck. A small D stands for the Denver Mint, S for the San Francisco Mint, and the absence of a letter means it was minted in Philadelphia. These tiny letters might seem unimportant, but in the world of coin collecting, they can mean the difference between an ordinary coin and one worth a fortune. Turning to the reverse, you'll find the detailed image of the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo. This majestic structure, located in Washington, D.C., is beautifully captured in miniature, complete with its grand columns and even a tiny depiction of Lincoln seated inside, visible if you look closely. Above the memorial are the words, "United States of America," and just below that the Latin phrase, "E pluribus unum," meaning, out of many, one. At the bottom is the denomination, 1 cent, a simple reminder that even the smallest coin holds a place in the nation's story. While millions of 1979 pennies were struck for circulation, not all are created equal. Most have been used heavily over the past 4 decades, leaving them scratched, worn, and far from perfect. However, some have survived in pristine condition, either because they were set aside right after being minted or because they were part of special collector sets. These coins can command impressive prices, especially if they have something unusual about them. One thing collectors watch for in the 1979 penny is the presence of minting errors. These can include double die obverse where lettering or parts of Lincoln's image appear slightly duplicated, off-center strikes that give the coin an unusual shape, or even planchet errors where the metal blank was flawed before striking. Such errors make the coin unique, and uniqueness in the coin world always boosts value. Proof pennies from 1979, struck at the San Francisco Mint, are also worth noting. These coins were made specifically for collectors and have mirror-like finishes and sharp details. While they are beautiful, their value soars even higher if they are in perfect condition and display certain rare traits. High-grade business strike pennies, those minted for everyday use but preserved without any signs of wear, can be especially valuable if they have strong luster and well-defined details. Finding one of these exceptional coins is like uncovering a tiny time capsule from 1979, a year when the U.S. was experiencing economic challenges, inflation was high, and the penny itself was worth more in copper content than its face value. Knowing that a single coin from that era can still carry such history and beauty makes it even more exciting to collect. Most 1979 pennies in your change will only be worth 1 cent, maybe slightly more to a collector if in decent shape, but the rarest examples, those with mint marks, flawless condition, and perhaps a striking error, are the real treasures. They are the coins that spark bidding wars at auctions and make collectors' hearts race. And here's the moment you've been waiting for. If you happen to own a 1979 Lincoln penny with mint mark in absolutely flawless, mint state condition, possibly with a rare error or exceptional strike, its value could reach as high as $63,000.